You used to be sharp, curious, and alive with insight. You saw patterns others missed. You felt truths before anyone dared to name them. But now, somehow you feel hollow, foggy, almost like a stranger to yourself. What happened to that spark? Carl Jung believed this loss is not your failure. It is what the world does to the gifted. It celebrates your brightness, then slowly rewires you to dim it. One day you wake up cut off from the person you were meant to become. But the brilliance is not gone. It is only buried. And buried light can be uncovered. In this journey, we will explore 6 hidden chapters, turning points that explain why your brilliance faded and how to reclaim it. Each chapter is a map back to you. And once you recognize them, you will not only remember who you were, you will finally see who you were always meant to be. You were the observant one, the quiet child who noticed too much too soon. You walked into a room and instantly felt the weight behind the smiles, the heaviness hidden in silence, the truth disguised in words like, "I'm fine." You weren't just intelligent, you were perceptive, emotionally tuned. And because of that gift, you became what others needed before they even had to ask. Jung believed the gifted child grows not only from intellect but from adaptation. You sensed the emotional climate of your home and shaped yourself to survive it. You learned to please. You learned to perform. You learned that love came more easily when you were useful, agreeable, and impressive. But survival always asks for sacrifice. And so, quietly, your own needs began to shrink. Your identity blurred under layers of expectation. The child who could sense everything slowly lost touch with what they truly felt. And now, as an adult, you still carry the same confusion, unsure of where you end and others begin. This is not because you failed. It is because you were brilliant at becoming what everyone else demanded. The very skill that kept you safe became the wound that left you lost. Jung once wrote, "When we live only through the roles others assign us, we bury the authentic self in the shadow. We become strangers to ourselves." If you feel lost now, it is not because you strayed from the path. It is because you were never allowed to choose one. You were too busy walking the road others laid before you. And the tragedy is that the world rewarded you for it. The grades, the compliments, the achievements. But behind the applause grew a quiet emptiness. Because none of it felt like yours. You never asked, "Do I want this?" You only asked, "Will this finally make me feel safe, seen, loved?" And so the gifted child carried a wound no one noticed. Success that felt hollow. A life that looked full but never belonged to you. And maybe now, in the quiet moments, you begin to feel it. That ache, that whisper in the back of your soul. It does not want more trophies. It wants truth. So how do you reclaim it? Not by burning everything down. Not by forcing some dramatic transformation, but by listening. Listening to the parts of you that were silenced for being too sensitive. Listening to the instincts you buried under politeness. Listening to the voice that once asked, "But what about me?" The return begins when you stop performing. When you stop proving. When you finally understand you do not need to earn your place. You already belong. Not as a polished version of someone else's dream, but as you. And this journey does not begin with becoming someone new. It begins with remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. At some point you stopped playing and started auditioning. Every decision became a calculation. Every interaction turned into a performance. You smiled when you were exhausted. You agreed when you wanted to scream. You shaped yourself into the version that felt safest. Charming. Agreeable. Helpful. Because those masks kept you connected. Those masks kept you protected. Carl Jung called this mask the persona, the socially acceptable self designed to navigate the world. It is not inherently bad. We all need it to belong, to communicate, to function. But when the persona takes over, when it becomes your entire identity, something inside begins to starve. The soul does not live on applause. It needs authenticity. This is why so many feel trapped. You look in the mirror and see the polished version, the achiever, the successful one, the person who makes others proud. But behind your eyes sits a numbness. Even when your life looks good, you cannot feel yourself in it. You have made everyone else comfortable, but at the cost of your own aliveness. So what now? The first step is not judgment. It is noticing, with compassion, with honesty. You ask yourself, what parts of me have I locked away because they did not fit the image? Maybe it was your anger. Maybe your messiness. Maybe your desire to be imperfect, to be vulnerable, to be unpolished. These are not flaws. They are fragments of your wholeness waiting to be invited back. Jung believed that the path to individuation, the process of becoming a complete self, requires integrating the shadow. And the shadow is not only our darkness. It is every part of us we were told was unacceptable. Your exhaustion carries wisdom. Your confusion has meaning. Your frustration is not weakness. It is a signal. A signal that you are tired of pretending. Tired of earning love through performance. Tired of bending until you disappear. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote, "Become who you are." This is the essence of peeling back the mask. Not becoming someone new, but reclaiming the parts of you that were hidden. Letting your voice tremble as you speak your truth. Saying no without drowning in guilt. Allowing yourself to exist without apology. Feels terrifying at first, because letting go of the mask feels like losing everything. Approval, identity, safety. But what you are actually losing is the illusion that love must be earned by vanishing. The truth is simpler. You were never meant to shrink for others. You were meant to expand into yourself. True connection, the kind that touches your soul, does not come through masks. It comes when the masks come off. That is where freedom begins. Not in rebellion, but in remembrance. Remembrance that you were never broken. You were bending to survive. And now, it is time to return. To reclaim your softness. To reclaim your strangeness. To reclaim your wild, imperfect brilliance. Not to become someone else, but to stop being what you are not. Soren Kierkegaard once said, "The most painful state of being is remembering the future, particularly one you can never have." Wearing the mask locks you into a future that is not yours. Taking it off is the risk, but it is also the only way to live the life you were meant to have. So you begin slowly. By telling the truth even when it feels awkward. By resting without apologizing. By showing the parts you once hid. And as you do, you notice something unfamiliar. Not the peace of approval, but the peace of belonging to yourself. That peace is the doorway, and on the other side lies the next truth. The one no one warned the brilliant child about. The one that silently shaped every decision you've made since. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. There is a quiet moment, often forgotten, when the gifted child learns they cannot rely on anyone. Maybe someone let you down. Maybe the pain in your eyes was ignored. Maybe no one even asked how you were. So you built a fortress, brick by brick, silence by silence, smile by practice smile. You told yourself, "I'm fine," even when you were not. Being strong became your only defense. Being untouched, unbothered, unbreakable became your survival strategy. But what begins as protection eventually turns into prison. The fortress walls you built to feel safe also lock you inside. No one can hurt you, but no one can reach you either. You wear resilience like armor, yet inside you are aching. Carl Jung once said, Where love rules, there is no will to power. Hyperindependence is power in disguise. It is not strength. It is fear dressed as confidence. You did not become self-sufficient because it felt natural. You became that way because asking for help once felt like punishment, because your needs were met with shame, because vulnerability became too costly. So you learned to survive by being the strong one, the reliable one, the one who never asks, never breaks, never falters. But the more you carried alone, the more invisible your pain became. No one offers support to the person who looks like they need nothing. And that is the heartbreak. You made it easy for others to forget you are human. Nietzsche observed, "He who fights with monsters should be careful lest he thereby become a monster." In this case, the monster is not outside. It is the role you were forced to become, the invincible one, the tireless one, the one who feels less and does more. But deep inside, the brilliant child weeps, not because they are weak, but because no one sees their need, because no one is allowed inside the fortress. So how do you return? You start by realizing independence only matters when it is a choice, not a trauma response. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to soften. You are allowed to say, "I don't have it all together." True strength is not endless endurance. True strength is the courage to stop pretending you must carry everything alone. Jung spoke of individuation not as isolation but as integration. Integration means wholeness. It means embracing both your resilience and your tenderness. You do not have to be either fragile or invincible. You can ask without being weak. You can be held without being helpless. You can share the weight without losing yourself. And this is the paradox. The more you open that door, the more you discover that vulnerability is not the opposite of strength, it is part of it. The more you allow yourself to be seen, the more you realize that true strength is not doing everything alone. It is knowing when to stop pretending you have to. The fortress that once protected you has become too small. It no longer fits the person you are becoming. The walls crack the moment you admit, "I am tired of proving. I just want to be." That honesty is the first step toward freedom. Soren Kierkegaard once wrote, "Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards." Looking back, you see why you built the fortress. But living forward means learning to step outside it, to risk asking for help, to risk being known, to risk being loved not for your strength but for your humanity. You were the brilliant child. But now you must become the honest adult, the one who admits that strength without softness is just another mask, the one who understands that healing does not come from being untouchable. It comes from allowing yourself to be touched. And when you begin to let that truth sink in, another layer of the wound reveals itself. It is the truth that no achievement, no recognition, no performance ever quieted. The truth that waits for you when the applause fades and the night grows silent. The truth you have been running from for years, your own emptiness. You learned to shine. You learned to achieve. You worked harder than anyone, always doing what was expected, always going the extra mile. Because somewhere along the way you believed that if you just did enough, you would finally feel like enough. But it never came. No matter how many awards you earned, no matter how many compliments you collected, no matter how many nights you stayed awake proving you could, the applause always faded. The praise always grew quiet. And when it did, you were left with the same question. Why do I still feel empty? Carl Jung warned that if we ignore our inner world long enough, we become estranged from the self. We begin to confuse success with wholeness, validation with love, accomplishment with identity. But the soul knows. The soul knows when it is being used as currency for approval. The soul knows when you are working yourself into numbness just to outrun a feeling. Because underneath all the doing is a fear. The fear that if you stop, you will disappear. This is why the brilliant child often grows into the high-functioning adult who looks fine but feels hollow. You keep moving. You keep performing. You keep chasing goals that were never truly yours. But none of it fills the silence at 2 a.m. None of it heals the ache behind your smile. None of it touches the part of you that never got to simply exist. So how do you break free? By refusing to keep living life like a stage performance. By asking questions you have avoided for years. Who am I when no one is watching? Who am I if I am not achieving? It is not easy, because performance feels safer than presence. But presence is where your true self waits. Not polished, not perfect, just real. Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." The problem is that performance gave you a how without ever giving you a why. It kept you busy, but it did not make you whole. It gave you goals, but not meaning. Jung reminded us that healing does not come from adding more. It comes from removing what is not truly you. So you begin to strip it back. You peel away the accomplishments. You peel away the trophies. You peel away the polished image, until you are left with what you have been avoiding, yourself. At first it feels raw, exposed, uncertain. But slowly, you realize that this vulnerability is not emptiness. It is truth. And truth is the soil where healing begins. You do not have to earn your existence. You do not have to decorate your wounds with gold stars. You do not have to hide your loneliness behind endless productivity. You are not broken because you are tired. You are tired because you have been pretending for so long. And now you are ready. Ready to stop proving. Ready to stop polishing. Ready to feel real again. Not perfect. Not praised. Just real. Soren Kierkegaard wrote, "The most common form of despair is not being who you are. That despair is the hollow space you have carried. But the moment you stop performing and start being, that despair begins to dissolve. Because the life you are chasing through performance is already waiting for you in presence. Waiting in the quiet moments. Waiting in the honesty you have avoided. Waiting in the stillness you feared. And when you finally slow down enough to listen, you hear it. A voice you buried years ago. A voice that does not want perfection. A voice that only wants to be whole. That voice belongs to you. And once you hear it, nothing can ever feel the same again." There is a moment in every life, often unnoticed, when the brilliant child disappears. Not in body but in presence. Not in face but in voice. They still smile. They still function. They still say, "I'm fine." But inside they go quiet. Because somewhere along the way that child learned a painful truth. The world does not want all of me. Just the parts that perform. So the rest was buried. The messy parts. The loud parts. The sensitive, raw, too much parts. All of it locked away. Not destroyed, only hidden. Waiting. Carl Jung called this hidden reservoir the shadow. Not evil. Not broken. Simply exiled. Your inner child did not die. They adapted. They split themselves in two. One part for the world. One part locked in silence. But shadows do not stay buried forever. They whisper in your overreactions. They scream through your addictions. They leak into your sabotaged relationships, your fear of intimacy, your constant need for control. It is not an attempt to ruin you. It is an attempt to return. Because what you rejected long ago, your joy, your rage, your longing, your softness, is exactly what you need to feel whole now. The paradox is this: the more you suppress the forgotten self, the more fragmented you become. You feel it when you laugh at the wrong time, when you flinch at kindness, When you chase love that hurts, or avoid love that heals, you become a stranger to yourself. A polished mask covering a silenced voice. So how do you bring them back? You stop calling them childish. You stop calling them dramatic. You stop labeling your raw emotions as weakness. Instead, you sit with them. You listen. You grieve. You allow the tears to fall without apology. You let the anger rise without fear. You welcome the innocence not to judge but to embrace. Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." The shadow is not your enemy. It is your forgotten ally. It carries everything you once disowned. And to ignore it is to remain divided. But to integrate it is to become whole. This is why your loneliness aches so deeply. Why your restlessness never ends. Why shame creeps in even after success. It is the shadow knocking. It is the child you once buried asking to be seen again. When that moment comes, do not shut the door. Open it. Hold them. Tell them they do not have to perform anymore. Tell them they are safe now. Because healing is not about creating a new self. It is about remembering the one you hid. Nietzsche once said, "There is more wisdom in your body than in your deepest philosophy." Your shadow is the wisdom of your body, the place where your silenced feelings wait, the place that knows you are already whole even if you have forgotten. You were the brilliant child not because you were flawless but because you were complete. It is time to let that completeness return. Not as a perfect version but as a real one. Not as a performance but as a presence. And once you allow that child to step back into the light, you realize something profound. The journey was never about fixing yourself. It was about reclaiming yourself. Not becoming someone new but finally becoming who you have always been. And from that place, another step awaits. Learning how to live openly in a world that still rewards performance. Learning how to hold your truth without shame. Learning how to be real even when it costs approval. Because when the shadow is no longer hidden, you stop fearing it. You stop running from yourself. And for the first time you walk forward whole.